You are on the brink. You are on the brink. You are on the brink.
Warning. Warning. Proceed at your own risk. We are now entering the underground. The algorithm has no power here. Your eyes and ears are vulnerable. Prolonged exposure may cause psychological damage. If you experience symptoms, return to the surface at once. Welcome to the Brink Film Club.
I am your host, David Pike. I am a film programmer, film festival director, filmmaker, all around, just watch tons and tons of movies. And my co-host, Veronica Chase.
Hi, everyone. I am a Tucson, Arizonan. I've been a professional stage performer for 20 years. And of course, I go by the stage name Veronica Chase. I've worked all over Arizona, Vegas, and California. I've had a very blessed 2-decade career. And I love exploitation movies. I love B-grade movies. I dig exploitation movies. Anything in that vein, I'm there for.
And we are joined today.
Yes, a very wonderful, talented man.
Tom Meredith. And let's say something about yourself.
I am a working cinematographer that hails from Detroit, Michigan. I live in Tucson, Arizona, but I mostly work in Los Angeles, California, Detroit, and Las Vegas. I am a certified cinephile and regular film goer of the screening room, which has brought me here today.
And that reminds me, we actually do our podcast in the famous art house theater in downtown Tucson, the screening room.
I cross-dress here regularly. Regularly.
We have an amazing indie film scene here, and this is definitely probably one of my favorite theaters anywhere.
So as far as filmmaking, when did you get your start? What made you want to get into filmmaking?
I've always been surrounded by film. My grandfather was the type of person who would literally catalog and record entire blocks of HBO and then like label VHS tapes. And he had like what looked like a phone book full of where everything was, right? Which is actually how we got to the film we're going to talk about today. Like how I found this initially was on one of his tapes. He had taped a block that I believe was a musical block. It was both Rocky Horror Picture Show and The Phantom of the Paradise. And of the two, this is the one I can't stop talking about. But no, what started me in film was mostly being a film lover and being a cinephile. And I think making films came much later. In high school, my house burnt down, like burnt to the ground. I think I was 17 years old. And I had always been interested in film, I think wanted to be a director at that time. But I had never tried really to do filmmaking outside of it. Like in high school, I would do the I'm running for student council campaign videos and things like that. And I found it was a wonderful way to skip class and never show up.
Oh, yeah.
But once I got into college, I went to an art school in Detroit called the College of Creative Studies, which is just a very standard, like the actual program I was in was not film. It's called Animation and Digital Media. They didn't even have a film program. So, but one of the things that they did do was they showed me a documentary called Visions of Light. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a director. I want to be a cinematographer. And someone else, had even asked me, they're like, well, when you cut, do you cut for performance or do you cut for technique? That was immediately my answer, is I was cutting for technique, not for performance.
Yeah.
I was trying to be proficient in a more technical side of things and realized that working with actors wasn't my strongest suit. So that kind of shifted me more towards camera and camera department in general. And between that and the film incentives in Detroit kind of exploded a little bit there. And it offered a lot of opportunities that school couldn't even break me. And I kind of just took off on every set I could get onto.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could do one thing. Like if someone came up to you and said, hey, here's $2 million. What's your dream? What would be the thing that you would just absolutely lose it on being able to just create and just come to life?
I would really love to help someone's script like fully come to life and be properly funded. I think $2 million is depending on the scope, obviously. Right. But I personally don't have a story that I'm like dying to tell.
Right.
Most of my satisfaction comes from really like extracting that vision from someone else.
Okay.
And helping them realize it better than they did on the page. I feel like the compromise that comes with filmmaking didn't get in the way of that process.
Trust me, like when I one of the things I'm really grateful for when I got my BA in illustration and animation.
Okay.
And one of the things that I've sort of hung with me is what's the why? And what I enjoy about a lot of what you say, how you explain how you got to where you are, it's a lot of what's the why. You know, and just the way that you just sort of really want to bring the body of work to life. You don't necessarily care that you created it, but you know how to take the raw material and guide it in a direction that's really just palatable, you know?
Well, I realized I brought up a house fire, and I think that brings me back to like where I was going with that was after that happened, I found myself having an exceedingly difficult time imagining memories that existed within the structure without the place actually still existing. So like I could show up at an empty lot where the house used to be, but I couldn't remember Christmas in that living room. It was really weird and interesting the way that like film is the preservation of that. So I think I found myself living behind a camera through most of, undergraduate, whether that was I'm the guy at the party that's got, the DSLR. It became a bit of a barrier for me, but mostly, also a means of connection.
Well, and it sounds to me like film was a way that you worked through trauma.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
I think that probably escapism as a child was enormous.
Oh, trust me.
Cinema.
As somebody who was bullied very roughly through most of my life, going home and watching episodes of Wonder Woman or certain songs or whatever, trust me. Oh, I understand. And this is before drag was even thought in my little young gay mind,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's goes to the whole thing that film is like a kind of escapism. That's your way to watch something to escape where you're at. Or a lot of times, if I'm upset, I pop in a movie or if whatever. I mean, it's something that you can escape to.
But no, I think cinema for me was like therapy more than anything else. I think it was something that was a place to either push and learn what my boundaries were. A lot of times during my teenage years, I used that to shock people. I was a horror movie fan for a particular part of my youth that I'm sure terrified my parents. I remember getting into things like the cinema of endurance and really seeing like, what are my limits? Can I further traumatize myself?
Oh yeah, no, I've done that before. Oh yeah.
It's been probably my longest relationship, outside of my immediate family.
Fair.
And it's one that is a great comfort in my life that like is so much, it's so simple and easy to meet someone and just immediately start talking film.
Well, I tend to notice there's a cross section. Like we might not all agree with a lot. Like I'm sci-fi, comic book, superhero. I've been since I was little. Then sort of film and movies sort of came along as I got like later teens. Then mom and pop rental places for everything. Italian horror movies, you could get them there all day long. It was crazy. I was watching these things before I even knew what I was watching.
It's definitely a form of trauma testing. It feels like a safe space to really push your limits,
right?
For me, and I think that I've always found cinema to be safe, no matter how far it pushed you in one direction or another. So, for me, whether it was, your perfect day off, whether it's starting your day with a matinee in the morning, having a theater that feels like it's entirely to yourself, or what, that is like a warm blanket that you can't get, from any family members, amount of hugs or anything like that.
Very true.
And I think to speak to what you're talking about with nostalgia, I think that, where you were at a certain part of your life really becomes so important. The sounds, the music, those things that you look back fondly on and take you immediately and transport you to those years that you found it.
Well, and also I find when you reach certain milestones in life, you are able to look back on things and almost project yourself there and go, you know what? Had I only been this, I could have been this then. But then you can't really do that because if you did go back and change yourself, then you wouldn't be the same person you are now, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
You know, like you can't go back and erase your mistakes because sometimes your mistakes make you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they are the thing that shape it.
Right.
It's one of those movies where like you go back in time, you change something, it changes everything for the worst. Not for the better,
Not like what you
but
think
for the
is
worst. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, because you need those mistakes.
I found myself as an adult, like the things that I want to surround myself with are predominantly things from the same, formative period.
Yeah.
I guess you would say. Whether that's a 10-year period of what you were really into music-wise or film-wise, I found myself kind of circling that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that I found at 11 years old.
Yeah. So let's go right into it. So the movie you picked for us to talk about today is Phantom of the Paradise, the Brian De Palma film from 1974.
It is a horror comedy musical.
Phantom of the Paradise, a gothic horror story.
What was that?
A beautiful love story.
Like a circus.
A cinematic odyssey through the rock universe. From Greece to glitter and beyond.
And it is quite faithfully, to a certain extent, like an adaptation, modernization, I guess one would say, of Phantom of the Opera.
So this film was actually scored and starring Paul Williams, where he was such a huge influence in 70s films. And he always looks the same.
He really does look like
He looks like he either A, never ages, or B, he's just always has the same haircut or always has the same.
Oh yeah, no. This was when he was doing his Farrah hair. He was.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his Farrah.
Yeah. Miss Williams was wearing a unit. No, I'm kidding. But no, seriously, the hair was amazing. This movie was amazing. I want to see more of this.
Yeah, this was your first time.
Yes, first time. I was floored. So I literally, there were parts that would play, and I would back them up just to watch them.
Is there a favorite part that you liked about it?
I kind of like messed up parts. So I really love Beef. Beef gave me life.
Oh yeah, Beef. Yeah.
That was one faggy queer. I loved him. Loved him.
Man, you better get yourself a castrato for this, because it's a little out of my range.
Something bothering you, Beef?
Swan, this was scored for a chick. I'm not doing it in drag.
You can sing it better than any bitch.
You don't know how right you are, Goliath.
It was really interesting for me the way the sort of the evolution of the bands who would die.
Yeah, it was
So in a way, it was like Spinal Tap. So it just, I enjoyed it immensely. It's one that I watched the day, it was my friend's mother pointed me and said, "You're the one that smoked the weed." And so, I did that and I watched it the first time and I was like, oh, this is everything. Then I watched it the next day again. I was like, this is still amazing.
Yeah.
So
It's an amazing soundtrack.
Well, even you were telling me, I texted you, David, and I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And you're like, oh yeah.
I was like, it's so good. But you discovered something else when you did a little deep diving into this movie.
Yes. The actress, I was watching it and I was like, I know her. I'd seen not all of it, but I've seen most of Suspiria. And I was like, oh, that's her.
Oh yeah.
Jessica Harper.
Yes.
Thank you.
Who plays Phoenix in the film.
Yes, Phoenix.
Jessica Harper from Dario Argento's Suspiria, which actually would have been after this. So this would have been even earlier in her career.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I found this on a VHS of my grandfather's, a little mix. I have no idea what was in front or behind. I think what was behind this was Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Okay.
And I think he would try to organize things by genre and then by year. So it would have been this in 1974, and 1975 would have been the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And which I assume he taped off of HBO.
It's very, very, very organized.
Right. Right. He was the original streamer.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This was just a weird formative movie for me. I think that it encapsulates a period of time where I really loved the music and the movies that were coming out during this period.
Yeah.
And as the years have gone on, I just keep coming back to it. Like some of these songs will earworm, for a while. Never gonna go away. Like some of them are that good, and it's just a testament to.
But they were made.
Right?
They were made to be that way, man. They were made to be. Like I was very lucky to be a teen in the '80s, and I can tell you that it is honestly some of the most inventive stuff. Like it was when video was becoming a thing for artists then. Granted, you look back and they're very primitive, but if you really just look at it, there's some really cool artistic things happening in early videos on MTV.
And just so you know, the music was nominated for an Academy Award and Golden Globe Awards back in the day. Even though it was a box office failure when it came out. It was still nominated. But there are a lot of movies that like that anyways. I mean, there's some movies that get nominated and make like $20. Well,
Basilica in the Desert got nominated and won Best Costumes. But they won an Oscar for that.
There you go. Down.
This is a movie that like I don't think most people have ever even heard of.
I hadn't.
Like it's so buried, a little bit by, the shadow of Rocky Horror that comes a year later. But also, this is not what you remember Brian De Palma for. Like, absolutely at all. And it's so strange. This was like my first introduction to his older stuff that is more comedically oriented, whether we're talking Greetings or Hi Mom or, some of these very deeply satirical, but basically just comedies. They're not in a horror genre. They're not really action films. And they're almost completely different from everything else he makes. This is the bridge film between the two, I feel like. Between that kind of shift to this auteur that we know for all of this other work.
Body double, blowout.
But he does everything in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
That whether it's the handheld shots, like this is 4 years before Halloween. Right. And it has a shot where the mask goes on, you get the eye hole cutouts, you follow a person through the floor. I remember people saying that's the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
Like there are so many techniques in here that he uses in other stuff. I don't think there's split diopter stuff, but like that would be like the only other.
Yeah, I mean,
Palma is.
They didn't do that, but they did something similar to like Lady in the Lake. That was a film noir that was released where it was a POV, first person point of view. Right. So I mean, it wasn't like original like Brian De Palma. But things were happening like that in the past to a certain extent. But putting the eyes over, yes, that could have definitely been something that he kind of like thought of. And
which version did you see? How did you watch it? Because there's various versions of.
The one that you sent me the link.
I sent the link, but that's the thing. The version I had was off the Blu-ray.
The reason that there's different ones, and you'll notice that there's really specifically weird shots, like he's doing a PR a press meeting out by his airplane, and you'll see that there's this sign that's just fucking floating.
Yeah.
It's kind of moving with it. And they do the same thing when they show a marquee outside. And that's because they tried to call, every time you saw something like that, it said Swan Song. Swan Song is also Led Zeppelin's record company. And they had threatened a lawsuit before this movie was ever even released.
Yeah.
So they like went back and like put in graphics that are like kind of badly moving.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Floating.
That scene...
Instead it's upside for death reference.
Right. I mean, because I'm doing animation. So I automatically was like, what? Something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe that I was like, oh, maybe they had to go back and change something for some kind of legal reason. I didn't.
They did
to it,
and they did. Like there are tons of scenes that start totally differently. Like for instance, there's a shot where Winslow is about to go walk into the building of the record company for the first time, and he's like looking up, and it weirdly like crossfades right into him. And he's looking up for whatever reason and just goes into the building. Well, in the regular version of it, he's looking at a street sign that says Swan and something else. And whenever they could, I guess, get rid of Swan Song in the same thing, they would just cut around it. There's like whole scenes that are intercut there, or like really badly superimposed marquees on stuff.
That was very, like, your eye just could not stop going.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Because it's like, it's Death Records, but it's Swan Song.
Right.
And that's where they start kind of blurring the lines. They're like, it's on the Death label. You're like, oh, so that's the label's name.
Yeah, exactly.
Swan Song is the record company, but they had to hide that as much as possible.
That's crazy. I had no idea about that. The original 1974 pilot movie, I guess, of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
I would go as far as saying this is definitely like B-movie fun.
Oh, for sure.
I enjoyed watching this quite a bit and laughing and having fun just watching it because it was a total trip.
Yeah.
And I was just excited, like, just to see what was going to happen next. Ricardo Montalban is in this.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun.
The Wonder Woman. She's here.
She should be eliminated.
C'est la vie.
Introducing Kathy Lee Crosby as Wonder Woman.
I would love to have you explain a little bit more about.
Hello and welcome to my corner. So I am a huge Wonder Woman fan. Anyone who's known me for more than 10 minutes usually figures that out pretty quick. But I remember when my first memory is the Linda Carter show. So I actually did not even know about this. This was 1 year prior in 1974. And I literally ran across this one probably after the original series had gone off the air. It's like early 80s when it randomly, I saw on the TV guide, like in the middle of the night, Wonder Woman for an hour was coming on. And it was like, okay, I'll record it. And it was this. And the whole time I'm watching it going, who?
You're not Linda Carter.
What is this? But now, granted, as I've gotten older and I've embraced the multiverse theory, I'm like, oh, it's just a different version.
Yeah.
I'm all right with it now. But yeah, so it's in 1974, the year before Carter took it over. The only other time that they had tried to make a Wonder Woman show prior to this was the producers of the old Batman show. And they were like, let's do a Wonder Woman pilot. Or it's more proof of concept because it's like 5 minutes long. So it's very comedic. It's very misogynistic. It's just very weird. And luckily it didn't see the light of day. However, when the actual Diana looks in a mirror image of herself, it's Linda Harrison from Planet of the Apes, playing the idealized Wonder Woman. But I digress. It stars some very interesting people. Obviously, Kathy Lee Crosby as the lead. Ricardo Montalban, as mentioned. But this is, people don't realize this was before Fantasy Island. This was before that. So he was just a television actor at that point. And Anitra Ford. And Anitra Ford, a little tie back to her, my very first time with Miss Baltimore Bombshell hosting B-movie and exploitation movie was when I brought my very first one, Invasion of the Bee-Girls. She's in it.
Well, she's in it, yeah.
Yeah, she's also one of Barker's Beauties, one of Bob Barker's original models on Price is Right. But this version of her, they took a sort of a page out of the comics at that time when they were like, well, her series is just not selling that well. Through the 50s, they tried to dumb a lot of the characters down because they had to take all the warm elements out. Unfortunately, hers almost became like romance superhero novels, and no one was wanting that. And so they basically got rid of her powers, and she learned martial arts, and she became like basically an agent, a secret agent, and went on missions for stuff and fought Morgan Le Fay, like random stuff. But it's her without her powers, and this is what this is roughly based on. So you kind of get a sense that they were trying to straddle a line between the comic book at the time and what they think that version of Wonder Woman should look like for the TV audience then. You basically end up with a woman that looks like she's wearing a 1970s airline stewardess outfit.
Oh, yeah.
Or Evel Knievel's like female sidekick. Am I wrong?
No, it's very true. The Knievel thing is kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't really have superpowers. She was like gifted athletically. She had some cool gadgets. She knew how to get a snake off of her leg with a bowl of milk.
Yeah, what was up with that? Can I do that?
I Googled it, and it said that some snakes are attached or attracted to milk.
Oh, I see.
So who knows?
There's a little bit of science behind that.
Right.
Somehow they're like, let's put some science.
Right. Hey, you're a ground fist. She's really not Wonder Woman. I feel like she's more like Modesty Blaze or Emma Peel. Almost.
Yeah.
She's like the secret spy that everyone knows her identity. She walks into a hotel.
Oh, yeah.
The guy picks that. First, he does the hair toss, which I love. And it's Wonder Woman. She's here. And they're like, are you kidding? Why are we bothering? Just walking in your costume, girl. Why bother? The music in this was so 70s. It was so 70s to a point that there's points when it almost sounds a little synthy. kind of
definitely sounded something.
you know.
Yeah.
For something that's shot very straightforwardly, like the period.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, the soundtrack is kind of experimental.
Well, and it's very generic, like a lot of it, like especially like the bumper between and out of, oh, will she die or not?
Pilot episode.
This was supposed to be an episode. This is, I mean, an episode. This was supposed to be a show.
And
Absolutely.
did they decide that because Wonder Woman got her powers back in the comics?
No,
like,
it wasn't even that. Okay, and I'm literally quoting this. The ratings were good, but not wondrous. So ABC held on. They still said, hey, you know what? We did get a decent response from whatever the fuck hell Pig Evan spit that out. So why don't we actually try to do it and make it look like the comic book?
Yeah.
And then it was funny because it almost didn't happen because it took forever for them to find Linda Carter. They went through Charlie's Angels. The most interesting person that I think could have pulled it off was Joanna Cassidy.
No, Joanna Cassidy, yeah.
Joanna Cassidy, right before Linda Carter went into audition.
She's got this.
Like Joanna Cassidy.
Joanna Cassidy's got this, like, she's.
Linda Carter auditioned for this.
Linda Carter, yes, thank you.
Get it?
Yeah. You know, the only thing that would have actually made this, in my opinion, if you wanted to actually try to redo this kind of similar again, but change certain elements. First of all, Anitra Ford should have been Wonder Woman. Her look is Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
She had the long, big hair.
Yeah.
She had the
See, I don't know. It's like I Invasion of the Bee Girls.
I don't.
And then being the bad guy in this one, I just can't picture as one. I picture as a good female,
right, fair,
evil bad person, but I don't see her as.
Well, what I find interesting too is I showed this to a friend of mine who like Xena, like Buffy, especially Buffy, huge Buffy. And when it got to the part when Angela and Diana are fighting, he goes, hey, she's kind of like Faith. And I was like, you know what? Kind of photo Faith.
Yeah, very true.
This was like, I think the thing that surprised me the most is that like it takes like 42 minutes or something for her to show up.
Before she puts on the Evil Knievel outfit.
The Evil Knievel outfit.
What I loved is as she comes out of that doorway, the flourish she takes as she poses with that music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Incredible music.
So, yeah.
It felt like, oh, God. There's a little bit of like in like Flint, or like this idea of it's an espionage thing in the beginning. And, but they're trying to fold in the super. I was so confused by she does martial arts and she has the plane, but there is no other.
But there's no other with
no other powers.
None.
That part just confused the hell out of me. But only because like at that point you're like, okay, so we have martial arts and we have all of the backstory and culture of like Diana.
They take you to Vaseline Island.
Right. The best way. That is very specific cinematography niche humor right there. Vaseline Island.
Yeah, it's I think what it was that was actually the filter they used to use on Sybil Shepherd on Moonlighting on the first season. Why? She was so pretty. Why? She looked like you. She looked like you were having a corneal episode.
That was probably definitely Vaseline.
Oh, it was
for sure. They tell us to use the cinematography, like use what's called nose grease.
Yeah, you see them.
And you're just supposed to rub it on the filter.
Love that journey for you. And seeing you're learning technical things too. The more you know.
We'll move on. This was my pick. My pick came about because I have a certain amount of like, everybody's like, hey, what is your favorite movies? Or what is your favorite movie? I get asked a lot. And I'm like, that's unfair. There's for a filmmaker, for anybody who's a movie guy, you have like 5 or 10. But I'm just saying, like, you don't go a favorite. You go like, I have favorites. So I always have like my top 5. I'm not going to say it. Maybe I'll do them over time. But one of the top 5s is Weekend, Godard's Weekend. So when I watch a movie like this, and the idea behind watching a movie like this is that I walk away inspired. I walk away with ideas. I walk away with a different sense of how I might have felt before I went in, that I feel like things could be done that other movies say it can't be done. Right. And you're like, it can be done this way. Things can happen this way. That's exactly how I walked away from Weekend the first time I watched it. And it was like, wow, it inspires me. It completely inspires me. It's comedy in it, drama in it, craziness in it, cannibals, it's got everything.
Without getting emotional, to declaim loud and clear the cold and serious strophe you are about to hear. Pay attention to its message and defend yourselves, for it will certainly be painfully seared like a brand on your troubled imaginations.
Look at you.
Man passes from an upper stage of savagery to a lower stage of barbarism.
Weekend clearly justifies the passion for Jean-Luc Godard in Young America. See it.
So what drew you to it initially, just to even try it? What made you think?
Or why this Godard?
So it's but it's the one that really have stuck out with me. There's a lot of movies that stick out with me, but there's ones that I just constantly feel like I was going to go back to, and a lot of it has to do with the look. So a lot of times I can watch a movie and I like the story, the directing is a lot there, but this one had a certain look with colors, with space, with attitude, and how things are shot and how the actors are together and how they just stumble across something, and it's almost like mumblecore, but it's not. And I'm not a fan of mumblecore, but it's this thing where like I feel like certain shots you watch this, you're like, I kind of feel like maybe they're going a little off script, and I love that. And you're watching it because you're like, what is really going to happen here? And you're like, especially at the beginning when they get in that fight with the other couple, and it's like it's just
like fucking
it's madness.
Yeah,
like
this movie came out the gate hot at me. I got to tell you.
Yeah,
I got to tell you. For some reason, the first part, and I told you this in a conversation before, David. One of my favorite movies in the whole world is What's Up, Doc. It was by Peter Bogdanovich. It's Barbra Streisand, and it makes me think: what if you were watching what was happening in that crazy reality while she's causing chaos from a distance? I feel for some reason it gave me that vibe.
Yeah.
It was
the chaotic energy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's really interesting because this starts with like an overhead shot of two cars essentially getting into a collision, right? And fighting with each other. But then we immediately cut to a single take shot of just slow zooming into a guy's face in and out as he's kind of cucked by his wife in her sexual experience with someone else. And this, it's fucking 9 minutes, 10 minutes long of this diatribe. And it's such a gear shift in the tone of the movie, and even just where the rest of it goes, that it's kind of a thing in itself that happens right away, and that is only, at least in my limited opinion, like mildly has anything to do with anything.
What that does, for me at least, watching the movie, is as you watch it, her story just getting more and more shocked at exactly of what she's saying. It's almost like adding shock value to like, okay, but it also adds to the point where you could tell that she's married with her husband, because at the beginning they established that. But at that point, you could tell that she is cheating. And then he is cheating too. And so this relationship is not what you see as a cohesive relationship. And then they decide to go on a weekend trip together. So you're going, okay, this couple who is not really together, going away together. And obviously they're going for an inheritance, whatever, et cetera. So there's a whole thing, but
common interest.
Yeah, they have a common interest, obviously, but you already know it from the get-go that they're not. There's no like, oh, we're madly in love, we're never going. There's already division created between them, and so you're watching this as this vision's created as they're going out and they're doing this the whole thing of the car crash, like that whole line. What was it? Basically, like the traffic jam shots.
Wasn't that like 7 minutes or something?
Oh yeah.
Cars honking.
That was about 300 meters long.
There's something about the length in which he took to shoot some of these sequences.
Yes.
Both this overhead, this long in and out zoom that happens between the couple. I think what was at the time the longest tracking shot.
Well, it was. Yeah, it was the longest tracking shot at that time. Obviously, since people have done,
But Godard's exercise in excess.
Yes.
Like more than anything else in visualized through the lens of this kind of, it's not Eat the Rich, but it's anarchic.
Yeah.
It's fucking all over the place in terms of its politics and what it's trying to say, and how experimental he's being with a lot of, because by the end of it, you feel like sometimes you've seen the same footage 4 times. because you've seen that same scene from different perspective.
Yeah.
Or, he's doing the thing that he does best, which is jump cutting right back to it and just kind of replacing that memory with a different ending to it. But this is the last truly amazing collaboration that existed within that 60s Godard period with him and Raoul Godard, with how perfect cinematography is. But you can kind of feel them testing, doing the biggest thing that they could possibly do.
And the thing is, exactly, and I love that about this movie, is that basically it's like they're going to go there. It's like they weren't going to be like, no, we can't do it. It's like, okay, let's do this and figure out how we're going to do it.
Let me pose a question about the movie. This is my very first time seeing his movie, and I do intend to see more of his movie. Yeah, because I'm going to see what else he's done. But as an artist, what about this movie in particular? Any style, anything it is. What is, as an artist, does it say to you as a film creator, as both of you? What do each of you glean from this ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, what I gleaned is what I already said, is that I can watch this and it lets me know that I can almost do anything in film. So yeah,
I guess my next question would be: can no one drive in this part of France?
No.
And what I love is that each accident got more and more progressively violent looking.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of people have noted that where they're going is it literally they're going to hell.
They're going down the rings of hell, and as they get deeper, it gets
deeper. It gets worse. It gets worse. The point at the very end, the cannibals happen and everything else, and it just gets crazier and crazier, and it's just they're going deeper and deeper down. But I like there's this guy with the drum set, and I was like, I think that's great.
I thought that was kind of like a really brilliant moment.
Yeah,
it's the one who was talking about his master and how he plays like garbage and
or just I'm thinking specifically of the visual of the guy playing the drum set by himself.
Yeah, and then the switch off
the AR whatever.
Yeah,
brings him other sticks or something.
Switches, and you're just like, that is one of the most interesting things that you could just cut out of that and be like, this is indicative of Vietnam. Like, I mean, there's something so powerful by some of the images that Godard is just able to almost separately, they almost exist as pieces of pop art.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And Godard's thing was kind of like he loved playing in the pop art pool, but he hated the commercialism in it.
Yes.
And this movie is like, I talked a little bit about this, but like, I do feel that all of Godard's films are reflective a lot of where he is personally in life. Like I feel a lot of him through Breathless, through Pierre Le Fou, through Alphaville, through all of these films. And particularly, like, I see someone's descent into more of a revolutionary and more of a radicalist in Weekend more than anywhere else. And I guess it was during the period where he was becoming a Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah, he did the movie, La Chenisse? Before that, about Battle of Algiers.
Yeah.
He did that.
Algiers and the Congo and this.
Which actually, the movie Battle of Algiers is like phenomenal, great. Yeah.
So Godard's interesting because, in my personal opinion, the most interesting stuff happened between 1960, 1961 through 1960. Is this 67?
67. Yeah.
Through like that 10-year period of him working, and him and his muse Anna Karina, who I became obsessed with, like most people in film school, when you learn about their collaboration and see all these different movies that he's done. Essentially, the thing that Godard did is said, there's nothing you can't do editorial. There's nothing you can't push the boundary of where the film begins and where the film ends. Like, how many times during this movie did we talk about the fact that we're in a movie?
Oh, yeah.
Which I love.
That one scene where they're trying to hitchhike and the guy goes, are you real or are you in a film?
Yeah, exactly.
All of his films are that self-reflexive.
Right.
And I just love it.
I think it's interesting. I think the way that Godard makes films and plays with the audience like that has a lot to do with the fact that Cahiers de Cinema, which was started in the 1960s, was Truffaut and Godard writing reviews predominantly. So they were actually critics who became filmmakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Godard used to say that the best way to make a film is to lock the studio heads out of the building and, use that as your lives and just go in the street and do it. So Breathless was like a movie that was just shot on the streets of Paris.
Okay.
So the way that he would just completely make you rethink what the limitations of this entire medium are, like you probably not have, or at least to the extent that you do, Scorsese and Tarantino, which were so heavily influenced by him. in terms of going, no, there's a jump cut right in the middle of, the scene, and you're going to see that line again. And how, Scorsese taking that directly and using it many times.
Oh, yeah.
Freeze frames.
Yeah.
Godard is, every single film is like, not like, oh, he's just trying one or two there. He tried everything on every film. I don't feel like he ever left a regret of maybe I could have tried this thing on a project.
Well, I mean, what a lot of people say is that when they were, movie critics and they're writing all this stuff, that they watched so many movies, that they really got into like how a movie is beginning to end, middle, the whole thing, how it's structured. And then they said from watching so many, they can deconstruct it. They can, tear it apart. And they created a whole new, like, French New Wave cinema of that whole, like, era of doing what they could do from watching all those.
Like, that's primarily where that comes from, is French New Wave.
Yeah.
And, like, their version of who were the original auteurs were probably, John Ford, William Wyler, fucking Alfred Hitchcock. Like, and those people as the core author or artist behind those things. And, that immediately became reflective in 70s films.
Yeah.
Like that kind of adopted, so we're influencing, a European New Wave. And then the same thing happened there. I do think we need another one of those.
Yes. All right. So that is another episode of Brink Film Club. I'd like to thank Tom Meredith, our special guest for this episode.
Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
I've really enjoyed that movie. I love it. Thank you.
I'm so excited that you liked it. That's probably better than whoever else finds it through this podcast.
Oh yeah, no, for real. Well, I enjoyed.
You said 3 times.
Yeah,
that is.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
I enjoyed both movies. Like, I've never seen Godard, but it does make me want to know what his style is like, and I want to see more.
But thank you for having me. And please watch Phantom of Paradise.
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Now commencing our ascent back to the surface. If you want more content, visit brink.com. If you want less content, you are happy and well adjusted. Congratulations. Your hosts were David Pike and Veronica Chase. All art by Andrea Osoinik. Theme song by Josh Bill Humor. If you are angry, DM death threats at Brink Media on Instagram. If you are horny,